David Parkin has been involved in football at AFL level as a player, coach and commentator for more than half a century. He remains a frontline participant as a commentator, still captivated by the game, still passionate about all things football. Welcome to Open Mic, David, and I've got a feeling you don't want to be here.
I'm a reluctant participant.
Why's that?
I don't think that I'm the kind of person that has much to get excited about what happened in the past and what's happening now or what might happen in the future. So I'm a little reluctant. Ours has been, I guess, not so much a love-hate, but maybe a hate-love relationship, Michael.
That bad?
Well, you understand the period when you were working hard at your previous job and I was trying to work hard at mine, and I didn't think either role was terribly compatible.
No, I accept that. I don't know if you've had time to notice, but you turned 70 in September. Isn't it about time you did something productive with your life? That's a joke, Parkin.
Well, no, but time. What has happened, though, Michael, is time, as everybody says, at my age, the decades go faster each decade. 30 to 40 was, moving steadily along, and then 40 to 50 started to gallop again, and 50 to 60 it went overnight, and I can't remember where the 60 to 70 has gone. So, and I've been filling it as often and as hard as I possibly can in all elements of my life, and one of those privileged people, Michael, that's been able to pursue the things that I love and have a passion for, and hopefully making a difference in for the last 50 years.
You played 211 games for the Hawks and you coached 3 clubs for a total of 518 games. That's the 6th highest total ever, yet you're so self-effacing about your contribution to football. Why so?
Oh, no, self-effacing. No, I love playing, Michael, like most people, and without doubt my most satisfying football moment was to captain a premiership in 1971. As a coach, I'm very honest about where I was. I took Hawthorn over in 1977 when John Kennedy could not continue, and I took over a premiership team that had won in 76. We won again in 78 with the same talent. I didn't have to do too much. It's
been a lifelong love affair with the game for you, hasn't it? I know I was amazed you were telling me recently about how many grand finals you've seen. It goes back to 1949. 1949.
Yeah, I had a father who was a member, the MCC member, and I used to go on the ladies' tickets allowed children to go in, and I went to every grand final. My dad had a great love of the game too. Fortunately, that was passed on to me, so we went every year, and I have had the privilege of not missing one, including the replays, Michael, so that would be a record that very few people could beat.
It is, no doubt about that. Now, my memory of you, I saw you play, my memory of you was brave, always kept his eyes on the footy. I remember you as a back pocket player, but you were concussed every second week. That's probably a slight exaggeration.
No, but I had 12, Michael, and I was concussed in my 50th, my 100th, my 150th and 200th. That's not bad, isn't it? That's pretty consistent.
So did you have a glass jaw? Or
I had a glass jaw, yeah. Not round the head, but on the jaw. And I remember going out the first time in the amateurs. I went to mark a ball on a wet day, it hit me on the jaw. I woke up and I started to run for the ball, and they were having a shot for goal at the other end. That was the first of 12. The last one being when I coached Subiaco, and I was knocked out at Claremont in the first 5 minutes. I woke up at 4 o'clock on Sunday morning, which was 26 hours later.
Wow.
And I retired on the back of that one.
You walk away from Hawthorn. Carlton has finished on top of the home and away ladder in 1980 and been eliminated with 2 losses in its 2 finals. What happened from there?
When I was offered the job, and was difficult in those circumstances, I think Peter Jones was pretty much offended. And it was a difficult and ongoing relationship with him because he never would talk to me as David. It was always the Hawthorn bloke. You're the Hawthorn bloke. And for me, it was a godsend in that the team was talented. We made them work a bit harder defensively, I think. We put a few rules into place. We were in a pretty good place with resources as Carlton were when I compare where I'd come from. And we got every opportunity, Michael, to do the job. And while we struggled the second year round, when I took the foot off the accelerator halfway through 82, and we lost our way a bit, the momentum we had, I think we were belted by Richmond in the second semi-final, maybe by 4 or 5 goals. We were lucky to get up against Hawthorn at Waverley a week later.
Yep.
And then I think we had the advantage of knowing what Richmond were going to do and how they're going to structure.
Richmond, didn't you?
And we
literally
didn't. Well, they physically got into us. I mean, that's a classical story of my probably most ashamed moment in football, that I had a sense when we were going down the race that it might be the Richmond mentality, as we called it. So I stopped the players on the way down to the ground.
So they're ready, they're assembled and ready to run out the race?
Concertinaed in the race, they did. And I said, just a quick reminder, if one of our small blokes goes down, and there's every chance that will happen today, so that wasn't a smart thing to say to all the 7 or 8 little blokes that are running around wondering where it was coming from. I said, when it happens, I said, I want you to turn around and knock the bloke out standing next to you. When he wakes up and says, what was that for? You say, that was for my little mate down the ground.
Knock the bloke out next to you?
Yeah.
You said that?
Ashamed to admit it, but I did. And it happened. We kicked, you might remember, we kicked, I think, 3 goals, 1 before Richmond even got the ball. So we're flying. In fact, was the difference at the end of the game, Michael. I think 3 goals, 1 was about the winning margin. And the big Mark Lee knocked over Alex Marcoux over there in Bay 16. So I immediately looked to see who were the coachable people in the team. And I looked to the back half because everybody ran to the blue, except the 6 backmen who were locked at this end of the ground. Some great names, Dool, Hunter and company. And it was Mario Bortolotto. And I buy him a meal every year on the basis.
Was he playing on David Cloak?
He's playing on David Cloak. Yeah. He turned around and kinged him. Oh,
did he really?
Really hit him.
I can't believe you're sitting here saying you're proud of that.
No, I'm not proud. I said, no, I'm not.
You said you buy him a meal every year.
No, I'm thanking Mario because he was the most. It's the most coachable act I've seen a player do. A disgraceful act, but it was coachable because I asked him to do it. And he sat David Clay down. David was big enough to take the punch and sit on the ground. Then, while he was sitting on the ground, he spoke. I couldn't see what he said, obviously. He spoke to Mario, and I saw Mario's hand go out to say, that's for my little mate down there. And I speak now, I speak about it openly now, it's a long while ago, but Neil Craig said, have you ever cheated in a game? And I told him that story, and he reacted as you just reacted then. So I'm not proud of it.
Because I know how important the essence of the game is to you. You know, that you care about its welfare and its future.
I do.
Coaching does that to you? Coaching
does things to people that, and it does things to players, as we're learning all the time, that the white line fever, the expectation of the moment brings about behaviour which you think might be having too much to drink. You become the person that you really are, but under those extremes you do and say things that you know you shouldn't, and that cost you for the rest of your days.
You lasted 5 years before one of the most bizarre events that I can remember in football. Fitzroy and Carlton swapped coaches. Walls went back to Carlton, Parkin went to Fitzroy. Was that couldn't have been by chance, was it?
Oh, yeah, no, totally by chance, in the sense that I was appointed by Ian Collins and John on the Monday. Might have been leading into grand final week. I think it happened. I was appointed and went about my work, including working with the reserves, who I think were playing on that day, to be pulled in on Thursday night. On the back of, I think, Robert resigning from Fitzroy, that was the first of the catalyst for it to happen. I think they were genuinely appointing me because Robert wasn't available, and the moment he became available, I was brought in and told by Ian and John that it was all over. Now, I actually took it more calmly than I can ever believe I did. And I looked at them, shrugged my shoulders and walked to the door. He let me get to the door, John. He said, Parker, I wouldn't be worried about it too much. He said, I'll be ringing you up sometime down the track because you in the future will be the right bloke to coach this club again. I won't say what I said to him then, but it was similar to the words that he used. And it actually did happen.
It came to pass.
But then on the back of that, Fitzroy came to me to interview me, and I probably had enough at that stage. Really balked, and they were saying, well, we're not sure you're the right bloke. I said, well, you better make up your mind because I've got to think about whether I want to do the job, not whether you want me. So you better go away and think about that. Well, they came back and offered me the job, and I took it on. And to be truthful, Michael, it was 1986, and how lucky I was in a sense that I was on the back end of one of the best group of players I've ever had the privilege to work with.
You coached well in '86. The industry says that might have well been your best year of coaching.
Well, I probably would agree with that. From inwardly as well, we had to win, Michael, I think 3 or 4 on the run home to make it. And we won them all by less than 2 kicks. So we struggled to get there. I think the first semi-final we went to Waverley and we played Essendon out there in the wet day. Wet day. And Michael Conlon hadn't done anything for the day, swung in off his right foot on the boundary line and kicked one of those incredibly difficult, impossible goals, and we get home by a point. It was just a wonderful finish, and we're through that, and we're still alive, you know. And then we had to play Hawthorn the next week, and I will never forget this on the basis that Roosie was injured. And he was injured, had a really bad ankle and couldn't play, so he'd been ruled out. When I got to the game, probably an hour before, they were all sitting around in their civvies, almost resigned to the fact that, you know, there was no urgency, no excitement, that they couldn't do the job. They give it their best shot, it was all over. And Roosie, give me the day, and very few people would know this, Roosie sensed and felt what I did as coach. He came out to me and he said, I'll go and see the doc, I think I might get filled with local and I'll be right to play. Well, he went in, had the injections, walked out of the medical room, nodding his head to me, it was all right, with a limp. So he's still with limp. And the place realised he was going out to play. They were all hovering around the door and watching for the same result. I lifted in spirit. They all jumped into their gear. We went out. And you won't remember this, except Grant Laurie. And Grant Laurie was the bloke who I had to go and tell wasn't playing.
Oh, gee.
Was one of the more difficult things, and he still talks to me today.
So was he dressed and ready to go?
Ready to play, and we made the change at the last minute, and he missed out on the opportunity to play, and that was, I get emotional about that. That was one of the more difficult decisions that I've made. But away we went, and I think we kicked, a bit like the start of the grand final in '82, I think we kicked 3 goals, 1 before Hawthorn had touched the ball. And Ken Herbert grabbed me and said, we're going to do it again, he said. He wasn't actually right. They kicked the next 13 goals, I think, and we got very badly rolled.
Your first year at Fitzroy was 3rd place, and then it was 2 lowly finishes. There was a suggestion at the time that you had, quote, lost the players.
Yeah, no, I had. We got to about round 11. I think if you look in '87, we were flying. We'd beaten everybody who finished in finals, etc. on the way. Well, I put it on the players, and we lifted the expectation. I think we hardly won another game from that time, Michael. And the worse we got, the harder I went. And
in a verbal sense?
In a verbal sense. Yeah. And by the end of '87, and this is probably an interesting point, end of '87, totally lost the group. They rightfully were trying to manipulate me out the door. On the back of that, very few people know I was given the job, offered and accepted the job to coach West Coast at the end of '87, which few people would know, in my house at Templestone. And even the family were, you know, reasonably happy to go at that stage.
So it was a done deal?
It was a done deal, yeah, done deal. And I slept on it over the night, and I woke up the next morning still with a year of my contract to Fitzroy. And the worst decision that I've made in football, I think, was to ring them up and say I'm obligated to the contract which I have and I need to see the contract out at the Fitzroy Football Club. And that led to the worst year of my life, without doubt the worst year of my life. I went under as a person, I think mentally, socially, physically. It was a really tough time, and a bad decision that I wasn't encouraged to go by the club, and a worse decision by me not to read the situation. And by the time we finished in '88, it was a basket case, the whole place.
So had the contract expired
the year before?
At the time, yeah, you would have definitely gone to West Coast?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And there were no caveats on it? It was a done deal?
No,
we want you to coach? Yes, yeah. I'd love to.
They came to my place and asked me, and they wouldn't go until I said yes.
Let's go to 1991. 2 men named John Elliott and Ian Collins. They'd sacked you from Carlton. They came a-calling again and got you back to the Blues for 10 years. I suppose the pride in you make you a bit reluctant to take that job or not, or was that just history?
No. I was. He's to his word. He did come back, and I can remember going to 2 Towers Avenue, Toorak, for the first meeting when I went A over T down the driveway in my shoes and cut my head open. Didn't get any...
this is to John's place?
To John's place, yeah. It took a while to get through the security and knocked myself out going down the driveway. The girl came out and gave me mouth-to-mouth, so I recovered pretty quickly. It was fascinating to walk through the door, and what do you want to know was the first question. That's usually the last question in the interview. I said, how good are you? Well, we're not too good. That group of players that you coached through, you'll have to get rid of all them because they're all finished and maybe start again. I said, oh, that's interesting. I really enjoy getting rid of all them. I said, that means it's a rebuild. We're talking about a rebuild here. Oh, we don't rebuild here, but it's a massive renovation, he said. And so I said, well, you know, how long is it going to take? He said, probably 3 years at the minimum, 4, could even take you 5 years. Now, this is John Elliott talking about the rebuilding of Carlton in 91. And he was right. We actually got there in 93 and got cleaned up. Essendon, really bad loss. Got worse the year after, when I probably should have lost my job, because we lost to Geelong and Melbourne. Geelong particularly had lost their best 4 players in that final, so we went out of the straight to Waverley game. And because I'm absolutely certain, I've never asked them straight out, but I think Gerard Healy, Dermot Brereton, and one other, I think...
knocked them back.
Gerard Healy, I said Gerard Healy, Dermot Brereton and Gary Lyon were the 3 that were given the opportunity to coach Carlton in 95. And for whatever reason, I've never had that conversation, might in my old age actually have it, the 3 knocked it back. So I actually held the job. But...
So you're saying that you would have lost that role pre-1995 had any one of those 3 said they wanted to coach Carlton?
That is my understanding, and I haven't had it confirmed by anybody other than a close person at Carlton, but I haven't spoken to those 3 players. So, yeah, I think that was an absolute real possibility.
When we come back, I want to talk about your notorious relationship with the Fourth Estate, the media. You were famous for your animated addresses at quarter time and half time and the anguish you showed in the coach's box. Was that just spontaneous, just occurred? Did you try not to do it?
No, it was just, I think that was me. People who know me, I have these dreadful highs and lows, I suppose, in my communication with people. When I am passionate about things, I want to deliver that as a meaningful way of expressing how I feel. And players are on the end of some pretty vitriolic stuff. Mm-hmm. And once I'd set that pattern, I think if I'd spoken in very controlled way, the message mightn't have got through with the same effect.
So are you saying that it was a little bit contrived? A
little bit contrived, yeah.
Was it?
But an expectation that on occasions it came out because I felt that way and delivered it, and then there was an expectation that if it was meaningful and he was passionate and he really meant it, you'd be on the end of some spit and a vein.
Well, I was. We saw it. The media saw it. You were responsible for the term the 5th quarter, which is when the coaches address the media after a game. You brought that same passion and anger at times to that.
I think the word you used was venom.
Venom, yeah.
Yeah, look, I didn't have much time for you or your mates.
Me personally?
No, I didn't say you personally, but I didn't have much time for you.
You know how sensitive I am.
You plural.
Yeah.
And and I couldn't over the years, and it got less and less receptive in a sense. I couldn't see what benefit the media were, and this was a stupidity. Now I look back and I'm part of the media.
Now that you're in the media.
Yeah, I'm in the media. I just couldn't see what benefit there was to anybody, me in particular, selfishly, or my team or club, by offering, information post-match, pre-match, or whatever else. So you got little out of me, except I know that they used to toss the coin outside the room to see who was going to ask the first question and get the headbit off. I didn't know that until later.
Yeah, that's true.
And I did take offence a lot. I took offence at things that you wrote too, and didn't have much time for you for a long time until I actually got out of the business, could think a little more clearly and actually get to know. And I've got 4 or 5 people now in the media who I would claim as my really good friends, that I enjoy their company, I understand what they're doing and the work, and I understand now from the other side how important it is to the game.
I'll tell you how serious it was from my perspective. I remember you and I go to a barbecue twice a year at Shane O'Sullivan's house with assorted other people, including Mark McClure. And I remember ringing once and Shane invited me. I said, "Is Parkin going?" And he said, "Yes." And I found out later that you'd made the same phone call. Is Sheehan going? Is that right?
And there were two empty seats.
Four empty seats. The women couldn't go.
The women couldn't go either, so 4 of us didn't go. I think that's a very true story.
We were of the view, even though you thought, I think you almost sort of thought there were parasites in the game.
I reckon I've never used the word, but I think it was appropriate way to
of how you viewed us.
define my thinking.
Yeah, and yet the view we had was, we love this game I love the game as much as you do. We just have different roles in it.
And I know that now.
Okay.
I'm publicly apologising.
Righto.
But it was the way I did it, and I can't say that I changed. Even when at the finish I was coming, and we had a blue over that because one article you wrote really
You thought,
hurt
I
me.
probably think it did demean you, actually. I'll say that now.
Well,
That
it was
story.
an article. It was an article that suggested that I'd been sacked or was about to be rolled out the door. And I'd spent from 1998, 1992. I'd spent basically those 3 years trying to put in a well thought through. You can argue debate about that afterwards. Thought through succession plan. I'd found it's an interesting story in itself because I'm not sure, it was 99, I can't remember the years, 99 maybe. I had appointed Ross Lyon in my house in Hawthorn at about 10 o'clock in the morning, and very pleased that he was the bloke that I needed at the time, having coached Ross at Fitzroy, understanding his thinking, his mentality, very sharp bloke, and what he had to give, so I appointed him. Went into the football club late that afternoon as John Elliott and Stephen Goff arrived from Perth, just to tell me that they've appointed John Worsfold as my assistant for next year. So it turned out that we ended up having two coaches, and both have remained very good friends, and I'm delighted that both are
Good choices, Parker.
both are coaching both are coaching pretty well at AFL level. But that was a pretty embarrassing moment. So we ended up with two coaches. Maybe that's why Carlton are was it $13 million in debt or whatever they are.
Carlton is into the grand final.
1999. Did you play your grand final in the preliminary final that year?
Oh, no doubt about it. We just played at the finish. They didn't kick what they should have kicked in the third quarter and left the door open. The team did stand up and it struggled. It got itself going. Half a dozen players who'd contributed minimal became good players, and Kudafis probably played the game of his life, and we were able to get over the line. And look, quite rightly, the two best teams would have been Essendon and North Melbourne. We happened to be third best and we played it. But it's remembered by me, and it's remembered by Carlton people as much as any premiership they've ever won.
Parker, your anger's famous, and sometimes the final siren didn't bring an end to it. There's a mysterious incident, as bizarre as it sounds. There's thousands of people, tens of thousands of people at the MCG. You were in an altercation with a spectator. Are you prepared to tell us what actually happened that day?
Oh, Michael, it was an Essendon support, an Essendon game, and
You were walking along the boundary?
Yeah, I had my arm round Wayne. I think we'd had a loss, and I was talking to him going up the race. The bloke came over the edge. I thought he was going to clock us or do something. And so my inclination was to throw a punch, which I did.
It landed, didn't it?
It did land, yeah. And that was a bad moment, and I should have been, and I was, in fact, the man that night at Millgate. Thank goodness the person in charge was Michael Reeves. He was
Fitzroy
there.
footballer and policeman.
My ex-Fitzroy player happened to be helping out a mate of his who was having his 40th birthday. He was on duty, and the man came in and wanted to press charges for the assault. And Michael didn't know and hadn't heard, and convinced the man that he should go away and think about it, come back the next morning if he was still there. And he came back, and I'm very thankful, asked for an apology. So I was very happy to
Which
give
you
that.
delivered. So you did actually make contact with your fist to his mouth? Did you not cut your...
See, the word has got around there. I ended up with 3 stitches in my hand, yeah.
Actually, you ran into that bloke later on, didn't you?
Gee, you heard the story, right? He was involved in footy, which is quite sad. He was a junior coach, and I was doing, as I so often do, a coach's course somewhere, and he came up and introduced himself to me. So
He said, do you recognise these teeth? You dislodged one of them.
And he was very decent about it, so I'm thankful for that.
I think no doubt you were the first coach to introduce detailed reviews of player games. Now, how extensive were they, and did they work?
Well, I'm not sure. It probably took away from me spending more time face-to-face with players by writing it, but I would think no player ever played a game for me, and I've kept every one of those all the way through, would have got there in retrospect, would have had a lot about the team, would have the statistical analysis and the stuff that we're delivering against them, but it also would have had a comment about their specific game and a rating. They all would have had that all the way through.
Out of 10?
If I didn't get to them, then they could always read it, and they would know where they stood in terms of that game. Took my life away from me in a real sense, because I end up, people won't believe this, but I end up working, incredible hours and sleeping 4 or 5 hours a day for about 20 odd years. And I don't think that helped me health-wise or relationship-wise, those sort of things. I don't think it does when you get so committed to that the time you should be spending with family and particularly children. I owe my kids gratitude and a real debt in a sense. Thank goodness through their grandkids, Michael, we know grandfathers.
Yep.
I'm actually got a relationship with my son and daughter for the first time in my life, and that's a sad thing to admit. Terrible father, but I'm trying to be a very good grandfather. You are
traditionally hard on yourself in that. Do you literally mean you've got a guilt burden?
I do. About family and the inability as a husband and father to do the things that I needed to do. I have carried that. That's the one regret I guess I have.
More recently, you came face to face with your mortality. March 2009, your prostate gland is removed, prostate cancer. What effect did that have on your life?
A massive effect, Michael, because I'd had a father and grandfather who died of it, not with it, and I saw 2 very painful deaths. Mm-hmm. And I guess, it's like us all. You get older, I'm, as you say, nearly 70, and your own mortality looms up. So it was a tough time and people who have faced that, know that diagnosing it, knowing whether you're going to do active surveillance or get treatment, and if you're going to get treatment, which treatment do you get? I mean, there's a lot of unknowns in this area, which we're working very hard now to raise awareness and certainly raise the money to do the research to find out. It was one of the more difficult terms, but if you've got a wonderful family and partner and was able to get through it, and I'm as well now, 3 years later, you can say that the PSA test is suggesting there are no prostate, whatever they are, the cancer in your blood, and you should be free. So I'm living a normal life now.
Now, we've had our moments over the journey, but you've made a massive contribution to football and something that I've never done. I've always been happy to acknowledge. On many fronts, you should be proud of that, and congratulations and good luck for the future. Thanks,
Michael. And we are, despite what the viewers might think, we have become extremely good mates.
Good on you, Parkin.
Thank you.
This has been a Fox Footy production.